Good morning, everyone. If everyone could take their seats, please. We're going to get started. All right, we'll get going. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the annual general meeting. My name is Gary Yee, and I'm the chair of the Municipal Pension Board of Trustees. I've been a member on this board since 2014. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are conducting our meeting today in the territories of the Hakamelam-speaking Coast Salish people. I would also like to welcome those joining us online. We are happy that this year members throughout the province can join us live by webcast. We have a full morning ahead of us. First, we have a financial highlight from last year. Then we'll hear the results of the actuarial valuation. Next is the update on our review of our post-retirement group benefit program. Following that, information on the planned investments. Then we'll talk about activities in the coming year. And then we'll close the day with questions and answers from you. Before we begin, a bit of housekeeping. Please put your phones on silent. The washrooms are available on this floor, around the corner by the elevators, just straight out this door if you're going out this door. Emergency exits are just outside the ballroom. In case of an emergency, exit through the back doors and turn left through the glass doors to the street. I'd first like to welcome Judy Payne, our Executive Director. And also here are Secretariat staff members, so please stand. They're in the room here somewhere, I can't see. Okay, so welcome, thank you. The 2018 annual report is available on the plan website. You might notice that we did not hand out folders today. The agenda will be on the screen between each presentation. This is one way we are being sensitive to our environment, printing less, shipping fewer boxes, and having less paper to recycle. On the table at the back of the room, we'll have a limited number of recycled material for your use today. There is a green question mark, or a green question card for the question and answer session at the end of today. Use this if you have a question but do not wish to come to a microphone. Fill it in and a staff member will come and pick it up from you. There is a white personal pension question form. Use this if you have a private question related to your pension. You will be contacted after the AGM. There is also a yellow comment card. Use this to let us know your comments about the meeting today. You can submit the white forms and the yellow card in the feedback boxes at the door. Just a quick note here. Today is the 2019 Great BC Shakeout. This will happen at 10:17 this morning. We will not ask you to drop, cover, and hold on, okay? But you will hear some phones receive notification at this time, and some of us may need to reply to those messages. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Okay. This is a notable year for the plan. Here are some numbers to keep in mind as you listen to today's presentations. 80, that is how old the plan is this year. We trustees talk a lot about sustainability and longevity. This is why. The plan has provided a reliable retirement income for members for 80 years. We intend to keep it secure for all of our members. On the anniversary note, I found it interesting to learn that there are several members who share a birthday with the plan. So happy birthday to everybody if you're in the audience. Another number, 20, there are two organizations created by legislation in 1999. One is the BC Pension Corporation, who administers the plan. They are the ones who are providing members services every day. The other is the BC Investment Management Corporation, BCI, who manages the pension fund's investments. One more number, 18. It was 18 years ago today that the trustees held their first annual general meeting. So today we celebrate all these anniversaries and birthdays. So on the screen you'll see the organizations that appoint the trustees. Would trustees please stand? So thank you for your service and thank you for being here today. We are all wearing green name tags, so if you find us later and you would like to say hello, please do so. We work closely with a number of service providers. There are several of them that have representatives here today, and I would introduce them to you now. For BC Pension Corporation, we have Aaron Walker-Duncan, Vice President of Board and Communication Services. Please visit the corporation's table in the lobby if you have a pension question. The corporation also has a team of people here getting feedback about how we can engage with you online. Visit them if you'd like to participate in a very brief interview. Representing BCI today is Gordon Fife. He's the CEO and CIO of the BCI. For Eckler Unlimited, our plan actuary, Richard Border, is here. Eckler provides the actuarial services for the plan. For Pacific Blue Cross, we have Lisa Meir. She's the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and she's here today as well. I invite you to visit the Pacific Blue Cross table in the lobby. For ZLC and Cubic Health, our benefit advisors, representing ZLC today are John McGrath and Dan Asner. But most important, I welcome all of you, our members. You are the reason we are here today. Some of you are here in the room with us. We expect many more are joining us online through our webcast, so welcome to you all. For you Twitter users out there, you can join us at MYBCMPP. So once again, here's our agenda. So it's time to get started. I'd like to introduce to you Hillary Brown. Hillary Brown will give us the financial highlights. Hillary is the Vice Chair of the Board. She's been appointed to the Board since 2012. Please welcome Hillary Brown.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you very much, Gary. Today we're going to look at the most recent financial highlights. It's important to remember that the Board's first pension security goal is securing basic pensions. This is the commitment that we as the Municipal Pension Plan make to every member who makes a contribution to the plan. Once a month, pensions are paid to retirees, or depending on the options that they choose at retirement, to the beneficiaries. We are very pleased to report the plan is strong and sustainable. It's fully funded on the basis that the current contributions continue, and that means your pension is secure. It's important that as trustees, we take a long-term view of the plan's sustainability. Here are some of the ways the board ensures the plan will be sustainable going into the future. The plan allows you and your employer to work together to build your future pension. Every time you contribute to your pension, your employer contributes as well. Valuation reports examine the plan's assets and liabilities, as well as demographic, investment, and economic factors that affect the plan. This report helps the board make any necessary adjustments. Plan partners in the board work together to oversee the plan. You can count on the board to fulfill its duties to act in the best interest of its plan members. Trustees make decisions responsibly and carefully, from plan design to investment strategy, as well as risk tolerance. First of all, it's worth refreshing ourselves about how the plan's pension work. Throughout what we call the pension life cycle, the board strives to maintain the strength of the plan by monitoring all aspects. The starting point of the life cycle is when you and your employer contribute to the plan with every paycheck. These contributions are then pooled and invested. Those investments become a significant part of your pension plan. About 75% of the pension you receive in retirement comes from the investment returns. Since 75% of the pension you receive in retirement comes from the investment return, it's very important to talk about the investment growth. The plan's investment policy is documented in the Statement of Investment Policies and Procedures, which we also refer to as the SIP. The SIP sets investment guidelines and directions to BCI. BCI manages the investments, and we, the board, monitor the progress in two ways. First, by comparing it to a benchmark, and by measuring it against our investment return targets. For 2018, you'll see our investment return was 2.1%. Although it beat the benchmark of 0.2%, that is a low return. However, we expect down years, and that's why the board looks beyond just the one current year. You can think of the 6.5% investment return target as the baseline used for BCI. While annual investment returns vary, this is a figure we measure our returns against over the long term. The plan's performance over the last 10 years can help us with that longer-term view. The 10-year annualized return is 8.8%, beating the actuarial investment return target of 6.5%. These longer-term results are very important. We're attentive to paying pensions for today's retired members, but it's also our job to make sure the plan can pay pension for all members, including those who are just joining the plan. This slide in front of you provides a deeper dive into where the investment returns came from in 2018. You can see that the private equity was the primary source of returns. The negative number in public equities might have also caught your eye. The one-year return was calculated as of December 31st, 2018, a period during which equity markets suffered steep declines. The market, fortunately, has shifted. As at March 31st, 2019, the one-year public equity return was 4.1%. It's investment income that really makes the basic account grow, and that kind of growth is possible because of pooled investments. The plan has a big fund to invest. We invest over $52 billion. Then these plan funds are pooled with other public sector pension plan funds and other investment funds. This is creating great efficiencies for everyone. Because we all invest our funds through BCI, we benefit from lower fees as well. The plan's investment costs are less than 1% of the portfolio, and by comparison, the average equity mutual fund in Canada charges fees of 2 to 3%. There are other advantages. BCI has investment opportunities available to large funds that aren't open to individual investors. Because of the long-term view we've been talking about, the plan can make investments over a longer time frame. Finally, the plan's investments are well diversified to cushion against lower returns in any one asset category. This diversification allows the plan investments to achieve a higher return at a lower risk level relative to smaller funds. In other words, we don't have all our eggs in one basket. The plan's long-term asset mix policy continues to shift toward real assets such as land, building, regulated utilities, and renewable resources. These assets are mostly tangible, physical investments in private markets which are suited for the long-term financial objectives of the pension plans. They typically provide reliable cash flows, grow in value, and are protected against inflation, while avoiding the short-term volatility of the public markets. As you'll remember from the pension plan life cycle, pensions are paid to retirees. It's the board's first priority to pay out the lifetime pension. Retired members and beneficiaries who receive a pension also have access to subsidized group coverage for extended health care, and non-subsidized group dental plans are available. These group benefits are not funded by member contributions and are not guaranteed. The plan's funding policy sets limits on group benefits for retired members. A small portion of employer contribution is used two ways. One part goes into the Inflation Adjustment Account, or IAA, from which cost of living, or COLA, is paid. The other part subsidizes extended health care premiums for current retirees based on their years of service. As of December 31st, 2018, the net assets available for the basic pension was $44.5 billion, while net assets available for inflation was $8.3 billion. You can see that the overall size of the basic fund and the IAA has grown over the years. Remember that membership has also grown as well. The proportion of retired members has grown faster, so while the IAA is bigger, it's being used by more members. The purpose of the COLA cap is to keep the IAA sustainable so that the retirees of tomorrow have an inflation account as well. On this slide, we show you the effect the cost of living adjustment has on the basic pension. Here, we're looking at growth over 20 years. We're using a figure of $25,000. This is not the average pension. It's used strictly for I can never pronounce this word. Just to give you an example. If you started with $25,000 annual pension in 1999, it would have grown with COLA's grants over 3 years. Each year, the board considers all relevant factors to determine if a COLA will be granted. Effective January 1st, 2019, retired members received a COLA of 2.1%. COLAs are not guaranteed. The board monitors the plan's ability to grant future COLA. Once granted, a COLA is added to each component of members' pensions for as long as they receive it. A COLA granted for the basic lifetime pension remains part of that pension. A supplement to the lifetime pension, a COLA cannot exceed the annual increase in the Canadian Consumer Price Index or the amount of money in the plan's IAA. Starting January 1st, 2016, the board implemented a sustainable COLA methodology, a COLA cap. The COLA cap is the amount of COLA that the board can grant in a year. This cap helps maintain the long-term sustainability of funds in the IAA so that they are not used up faster than they can be replaced. Every 3 years, the plan's independent actuary assesses the cap for the next 3 years and recommends the board to adjust or not to adjust if needed. Philip will be speaking more about the COLA in his presentation when he talks about the valuation results. Costs paid out by the plan include investment management fees and benefit administration costs. BCI provides investment management services to the plan. Pension Corporation is the administrative agent providing members services on behalf of the board. I talked about the relative costs of the management fees earlier. The main reason for the investment management increase The main reason for the investment management increase from 2017 to 2018 is because 2018 included an adjustment for retroactive GST payments. It was for multiple years, and it's a one-time thing. In the future, GST expenses will only be for that one individual year. So how does all of this add up? At the start of 2018, the plan had $51.5 billion. At the end of the year, the plan's assets had grown to $52.8 billion. We collected about $2.2 billion from contributions and gained about $1.2 billion from investment returns. We paid out about $2.1 billion in pensions, benefits, and expenses. So as you can see from this diagram, the same amount came in through contributions as went out in payments, pension payments, benefits, and expenses. The plan grew through contributions and investment returns. The board believes in responsible investing. As you may know, we're signatories to the Principles for Responsible Investing, also known as PRI, an international network of investors dedicated to understanding how environment, social, and governance, and you may have heard of it referred to as ESG, factors affect investments, and helping investors incorporate those factors into their investment decisions. Last year, we, the board, encouraged BCI to develop a climate action plan to help us understand the implications of climate change on our investments. We are also a signatory to Climate Action 100+. Its purpose is to engage with the world's largest corporate greenhouse gas emitters. So what's the goal? To improve governance on climate change, curb emissions, and strengthen climate-related financial disclosures. Close to 300 investors together have nearly $30 trillion in assets under management. The board also supports BCI as a member of the steering committee for the 30% Club, which advocates for companies to enhance gender diversity, and the Sustainable Accounting Standards Board, which has a mandate to promote standards of sustainable reporting. This year, the Municipal Pension Plan marks 80 years of services to its members, as Gary has mentioned. For it to meet the needs of those working on contributing toward their retirement 10, 20, 30, and maybe even 80 years from now, the plan has to keep adjusting to growing numbers of members receiving pensions, adjust to global market changes and uncertainties, and protect the sustainability of the plan for all members. The plan has more than 345,000 members, and they are incredibly diverse. Some have just started to build their pensions, while others have been collecting their pensions for decades. As trustees, we govern with the best interest of all plan members in mind as the plan moves into the future. Good governance and far-sighted financial management have helped the plan become a more sustainable model. We're proud of our plan, and we trust you are too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hillary. We're glad to have good financial news to share. Next, I'm pleased to introduce to you Philip Teufert, the Valuation Committee Chair, to present the 2018 valuation result and the COLA cap for 2020 to 2022. Philip is an Assistant Deputy Minister and Executive Financial Officer for the Ministry of Health. He's been a board member since 2012. So please welcome Philip Teufert.
Thank you, Gary. As an accountant, I'm really excited to be up here talking about valuation, actually. I know that's sad. So first, let's look at what a valuation is and why it's so important to make sure that the municipal pension plan is on the right track. A valuation projects future cash flows. It looks at future costs, that is, pensions that we pay to members and beneficiaries, and the costs of managing the plan. It compares the projected costs to future income, that is, the contributions from members and employers, and the investment returns. The valuation also takes into account the current assets. The valuation is done by an independent actuary, a financial professional who specializes in financial modeling, the laws of probability, and risk management. The plan's joint trust agreement requires an independent actuarial valuation be done at least every 3 years. The valuation provides the board with a full picture of the plan's funded status and the demographic and economic factors that positively or negatively affect the plan's finances. The actuary then advises the Board of Trustees to help us determine requirements and options for keeping the plan strong and stable. There are 2 questions that evaluation seeks to answer. The first, what is our best estimate of future costs? And the second, what adjustments are required to ensure the plan has sufficient assets to meet future pensions? What the trustees are trying to determine is the level of contributions that are needed over each member's working career to ensure the plan has enough funding to meet our pension obligations. Now, before we get into results, it's important to understand a bit more about valuation. The valuation concentrates on the funds in the basic account because that is the account that pays the lifetime pension. So what information does the actuary look at? There are 2 distinct sets of information: the actual member data and the assumptions that forecast the future state of the plan. We get the actual data from Pension Corporation. It provides anonymous information on every single plan member. This is why valuations take approximately 9 months to finish, with hundreds of hours of work from not only the actuary, but also the trustees and the plan service providers. The assumptions that we use are set using past data and estimates of future experiences. Trustees, with recommendations from the actuary, determine what assumptions about the future we will use for the valuation. These assumptions look at the obligations we have today, the obligations and revenues we expect in the future. And then trustees approve these assumptions before the valuation begins. Then the actuary takes the actual information and the approved assumptions and uses tools and modeling techniques to forecast answers to the 2 questions that we talked about earlier. The actuary also studies the inflation adjustment account funding for the purposes of recommending the Sustainable Cost of Living Adjustment, or COLA, cap for the next 3 years. From this analysis, the actuary makes recommendations to the board. So next, we'll look at the assumptions we use. All of the assumptions we use in the valuation look at the long term. It is one of the valuation's principles that experience over recent years should not have too much influence on the assumptions. That being said, we do look at current economic assumptions such as investment returns, trends in inflation, and actual and projected salary growth. The investment return is probably the most significant assumption. It has the greatest effect on the value of the pension fund. If we overestimate income, we'll start running a deficit. On the other hand, if contributions are too high or our investment assumptions are too low, then members will pay more than they need to. What we seek is a balance in which we feel confident that contributions and investment returns will meet our obligations. Demographic assumptions look at membership data and demographic trends. They ask questions like, at what age do members retire? What are the stats telling us about life expectancy? What is the probability that a member will withdraw from the plan before retiring? And how many members have gone on disability? So what are the economic assumptions this valuation is based on? Long-term investment rates have decreased, and the board has adjusted the plan's asset mix to compensate for lower expectations. Inflation rates will be unchanged, so inflation is not expected to affect the pension fund. Salaries will grow more slowly than anticipated, which means liabilities grow less quickly and there is less change in contribution rate growth. Now for the demographics. This valuation shows that the plan is continuing to mature. The larger number of retired members relative to active members means the plan is more sensitive to investment returns. That's because there are fewer contributions coming into the plan. A couple of other points about demographics. The board has adopted a new way of considering lifespan, which should give us more plan-specific data. The expense assumption has decreased slightly. While there is a small change to anticipate larger administration costs in future, there is a reduction as a result of the elimination of the medical services plan premium subsidies. As a reminder, the MSP premium subsidies comes from the basic account, and so the savings are kept in the basic account. We also assume that the average retirement age will continue to increase. The funding method and assumptions should be set to arrive at a level of contributions that will best meet the criteria that you see on the screen. The board's primary goal is to secure the pension for all members. That is, to set aside enough funds to meet the cost of pensions and expenses. We also seek to even out contribution rates so we don't have to change rates with each valuation. Finally, we aim to allocate costs evenly over time so they are shared fairly among members and employers. I'm very excited about this next slide, obviously. So finally, here are the results. The valuation found the plan remains fully funded on the basis that the current contributions continue. As at December 31st, 2018, the plan was funded at 105.1%. In fact, the plan had a surplus of about $2.87 billion. In addition, we have about $2.5 billion in the rate stabilization account, which we created to help offset potential future contribution rate increases. The board uses the surplus from the 2015 valuation to create this account. Key message, the fund that pays your lifetime pension is secure. While this is good news, we need to be strategic. The plan continues to rely on solid investment returns to meet its obligations. And as we said, the maturing of the plan makes us more sensitive to investment returns. As you heard in Hillary's financial highlight presentation, about 3/4 of your pension comes from these investments. The global market is unsettled at best, and the plan has to continue to adapt to balance risk and return. All in all, these times require us to be strategic about the current surplus. Before we leave this slide, I'd like to point out a difference in how we talk about the plan's funding. In the financial highlights presentation, you saw that the plan ended 2018 with $52.8 billion in net assets. That is our statement of our financial position on that particular day. So in this case, December 31st, 2018. The accounting basis figure is the market value of the plan's assets on that day. It includes all of the assets, the basic account, the inflation adjustment account, and the rate stabilization account. This slide shows $58.53 billion as the funded portion of the liability. The actuarial figure provides a long-term picture of the health of the plan because it takes into consideration future contributions and pension obligations. Even though this figure is for the basic account only, it does not include the inflation adjustment account and the rate stabilization account. The future considerations makes it larger than the accounting basis. I think it's fair to say accountants are quite skeptical. So here you see the most recent valuation compares with the last two. In 2012, the plan had an unfunded liability, meaning it was less than fully funded. The joint trust agreement directs the board to address unfunded liabilities through a contribution rate increase. In July 2014, contribution rates for both members and employers increased 1.4%. After that valuation, the plan partners and the board worked together to do two things. One, improve the rate of sustainable COLA, and two, create a rate stabilization account if the 2015 valuation resulted in a surplus. In 2015, we did have a surplus. As I said earlier, we put most of the 2015 surplus into the rate stabilization account to help keep the required basic contribution rates unchanged if possible. The board also took the opportunity to strengthen the plan's inflation protection. After the 2015 valuation, the board increased the percentage of contributions going into the IAA effective January 1st, 2019. An additional 1.06% of contributions is going to the IAA. In addition, in accordance with the plan's funding policy, excess investment returns have also been moved out of the basic account and into the inflation adjustment account. These actions have moved more money into the inflation adjustment account, ensuring that those funds can only be used to grant COLAs. As we saw in the previous slide, the 2018 valuation also showed a surplus. When there is a valuation surplus, the board acts on a specific set of instructions outlined in the Joint Trust Agreement, or JTA. The Joint Trust Agreement instructs that the first use of surplus is to amortize or eliminate unfunded liabilities. So about $2.2 billion of surplus would be required to eliminate the amortized liabilities from the 2009 and 2012 valuations. The Joint Trust Agreement also specifies that a surplus simultaneously decrease contribution rates and improve benefits by changing the normal form of pension and changing the benefit formula. The amount needed to meet all those requirements far exceeds the available surplus. Therefore, the surplus will be added to the basic account. This will help promote contribution rate stability for the future and create a more equitable experience for active members and employers contributing to the plan right now. Another part of the valuation report is reviewing the level of the COLA cap. It can go up, go down, or stay the same depending on actuarial forecasts and decisions of the board. Based on the 2018 valuation results, the Board of Trustees has decided to keep the COLA cap unchanged at 2.1%. If you've read the valuation report, you may have noticed that the valuation determined that the cap could have gone up by 0.05%. The board decided to keep the cap at the current level of 2.1%. We made this decision to be conservative and further maintain our prudent management of the inflation adjustment account's longevity. So this is how the cap works. If the increase in the Canadian Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is less than the cap, COLA of up to 100% of the CPI may be granted. If the CPI is greater than the cap, any COLA granted will be limited to the level of the cap. The COLA cap will be in effect for 2020, 2021, and 2022. The board applies the cap each year it is in effect. It is not an average over 3 years. So before I close, let's review the key points from the latest valuation. 1, the plan is fully funded as at December 31st, 2018, on the basis that current contributions continue. 2, the sustainable COLA cap is 2.1%. This means trustees will be able to grant COLA up to 2.1% for the next 3 years, depending on the change in the Canadian CPI. 3, the plan must adapt to maturing membership. This means the biggest growth the plan funds see is not from contributions, but from investment returns. At the same time, we are in a lower investment return environment that is unstable, and the plan is adapting its investment approach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. We will now have an update on our post-retirement group benefit review by our Benefits Committee Chair. Denise Bernardo recently retired from Royal Inland Hospital as a pharmacy technician and from Secretary-Treasurer of the Hospital Employees Union. She serves on the board of the Provincial Health Service Authority, and she has been a plan board member since 2001. So please welcome Denise Bernardo.
Thank you, Gary, and good morning, everyone. I'm here to give you an update on the board's review of the post-retirement group benefits program. I'll talk about why we're reviewing the program, how we're going about it, the status of the review, and what comes next. You may recall that providing a group benefits program is one of the board's top 3 pension security goals. Regular review of the group benefits program is part of the board's oversight. This review is a bit different. After the changes made January 1st, 2017, the board promised a review after 2 years of experience with the new program. You have been hearing about our review for some time, and some of you have wondered why it's taking so long. The first reason is we did not have 2 years of experience until the end of 2018. The second reason is our review is multifaceted. Let's take a look at some of the elements. A review of this sort has important technical aspects. In other words, we need data about how the program is performing. The board hired ZLC Financial and Cubic Health as our professional health benefits advisors to gather and understand data so the board has a clear picture of how the program is working. As you can see, there are quite a number of elements to our review. Starting at the top, the 12 o'clock position, we have a review of the drug plan, which involves the analysis of claims, usage, and the effectiveness of the 2017 program changes. This is separated from other data collection because prescriptions are the largest cost of the program. At the 1 o'clock position, there is a plan design benchmarking. This means comparing the program's design and use with similar programs. At 3 o'clock is the Pacific Blue Cross, or PBC, plan review. This review has looked at a range of elements, including usual and customary fees, administration, and adjudication practices. At 5 o'clock is member engagement. This began last year with some pre-consultation and is continuing this year, and I'll talk about this more later. At 6 o'clock is what we call the PBC plan renewal. This includes the August 28 dental plan premium adjustment and the extended health care premium renewal rates. Continuing around the clock, at 7 o'clock is dental plan review, which, like the program in general, includes analysis of claims, usage, effectiveness, and value. At 9 o'clock, we have trustee education, which has included an update on the benefit market and topical issues. So where are we with the review? We have completed analysis of claims data and other plan analytics, review of PBC's benefit delivery and group administration, including a comparison against best practices, benchmarking of the program against other plans, and review of the dental program. We are now getting input from you, our members, reviewing our professional health benefit advisors report. So what is happening and when? During the rest of this year, 2019, we will engage members to understand their priorities for benefits. The member survey is open now until November 15th. There will also be a limited number of telephone interviews. Next year, 2020, we will receive the final report from our professional health benefit advisor. Decide if any benefit plan design changes are needed, and keep you updated through the website. In 2021, we will provide a final report. Now, most importantly, how can you participate? Go online. There is a member survey available for your input. Take the survey by following the link at the plan website, mpp.pensionsbc.ca, and please complete your survey by November 15th. We encourage everyone to take the survey to ensure your voice is heard. It provides an opportunity to tell us what is important to you and explain why it is important. We also are looking to interview a limited number of members by phone. If you are interested in being interviewed, sign up at the table at the back of the room, but we can't guarantee all will be interviewed. We encourage you to take the online survey as it allows you to express your opinion. Remember, your input will shape our benefit program for years to come, so please think long-term when you participate. Thank you for your time this morning, and I look forward to your questions during the question and answer session. I'll turn it back to Gary now.
Okay, thank you for bringing us up to date, Tanisa. Now, Gordon Fife's here to talk about pension investments. Gordon is the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Investment Officer of BCI, overseeing more than $145 billion in managed assets. He has more than 30 years in the investment and finance industry, so please welcome Gordon Fife.
Thanks, Gary. Right, thank you. "30 years, it's a long time. But one of the reasons I like coming to this event is I get to meet some of the people here, and I'm sorry if I broke up some of the meetings that you were having around the pastries and coffee earlier. But I did barge in on one young fellow over here, and he remembered when I was here 2 years ago, and we were talking about that. But then he asked me, how do you sleep at night with all that money to worry about? And it reminded me of a story, because I've been with BCI now for about 5.5 years. But prior to that, I ran the federal government's public sector pension, about the same size as this, for 11 years. And early on, we had a meeting similar to this for all of the beneficiaries and contributors to the public service plan at the federal level. And when it's over, there was a lunch, and I was sitting at the table with all of the admirals and the generals and their staff. And one of the staff members said to me, "How do you sleep at night?" And I said to her, when I make a mistake, you have to understand, nobody dies. The uniforms around the table here, because we were still very active in Afghanistan. I said, you look at the admirals, and particularly the generals, because we'd been losing quite a few of our soldiers at that time. I said, when they make a mistake, somebody dies. And one of the generals across the table, who I thought was focused on his soup, looked up at me. And if you've ever looked into the eyes of one of these generals, you'll know what I mean. He was dead serious, and he stared at me, and he said, "That's because you haven't underperformed yet." So that's where I stay awake at night, is worrying about the generals. You'll see, one moment here. So you see we're managing just about $155 billion of assets overall at BCI. That number is growing now to about $170 billion. You may have seen that ICBC has selected BCI as the manager of its $18 billion of insurance and pension money. So we'll be assuming the responsibility for those assets starting very soon as it gets phased in. We're investing in 70 countries around the world. What that means is we travel a lot. I was in Tokyo last week for 2 days, London the week before for 2 days, and I'm leaving again. So when you see me leave the stage a little bit early today, it's not because I don't want to answer your questions, but I do have a flight to catch at 1:30. And we're investing in a whole range of assets that you'll see down there in the lower corner. We are today managing pensions for over 600,000 British Columbia citizens and managing insurance money for about 2.3 million workers. And historically, the returns that have generated, as Hilary and Philip shown, have been quite good, quite strong. But that's led a lot of people to ask us, why are you changing? Why are you making changes to a structure, to a plan, to a process that's worked so well for so long? And the organization actually started changing some of how it was managing money and what sort of assets it was managing some years ago and before I arrived. And so let me show you what I mean. So this is a chart of the returns of Canadian equities during the different decades. So you'll see back in the 1980s, the returns on Canadian equities were 8%. They got up to 10.5% during the 1990s, and part of that was because you had the crash of '87, markets were down, so you ended up getting a better return in the 90s. 2000s, it's fallen to 7.4, and 2010 to 2018, it's down at 6%. Now, historically, if we go back in time, the basic portfolio that was offered by BCI was a combination of Canadian equities, Canadian government bonds, and real estate. So let me show you the other two components to that traditional portfolio. The blue line is real estate returns. So if we go back to 2000 and early 2000s, real estate was yielding around 8%. And you'll see that that's now fallen to around just above 4%. Canadian government bonds back at the beginning of the period were yielding 6%. And today, we're trying to squeeze 2% out of them. Now, as Philip and Hilary have shown you, the actuary says we need to generate a return over the long term of 6.5%. Well, you can take those 2% bonds, that 4% real estate, and that 6% from Canadian equities any way you want, and you're not going to get 6.5%. So what we needed to do was we needed to change if we were going to continue to deliver that 6.5% in the long run. And these low returns are true not just for the Canadian assets. There's been a shift in returns in all asset classes. So you'll see as we move across, what were the returns that were expected in 1990 in all of these asset classes, going from bonds, stocks, global stocks, all the way over to infrastructure. The big, I don't know what color that is, gray or pinkish color, is what we thought the returns, or what the returns were back in 1990. And the dark blue is an estimate of what we think the returns are going to be going forward. If you just eyeball it, the returns that we're looking at today going forward are about half, actually a little bit less than half of what we were looking at back in 1990. So we had to change, and that's what's driven a lot of the change that's taken place at BCI over the last few years. We've changed the sort of investments that we're making. So rather than just government bonds, we're now also investing in corporate bonds, credit. So you'll get a government bond may yield this, but a company bond will pay more. You're certainly taking more risk, but it will give you a higher return. We've also started, instead of just buying buildings and collecting the rent from whoever is living or renting that building from us, we're doing a lot more development today. There's a lot more profitability possible in the development. So if you're in Vancouver, And you've heard about the Post office building downtown. That is one of our developments. And another one is Oak Ridge. Now, in all of these areas where we're changing and developing new activities internally to try and deliver to all of you the 6.5%, we need to acquire the talent. We need to get the skills in place inside the organization that will allow us to do that. So in turn, in doing all of this, we have been hiring and recruiting people with the experience to do this rather than paying someone on the outside to do it. We've also shifted significantly the geographical focus. It has been historically focused on Canada, and going back a number of years, we've been diversifying outside of Canada, and I'll show you a bit more of that in a moment. And also, we've been bringing a lot more of the assets that are being managed for you inside. So we're hiring people. More of the investment decisions are being made inside of BCI. Historically, we would pick a manager outside and pay them to make those decisions. Now we bring it inside. The reason for that is twofold. It's about 3.5 to 7 times more expensive when you hire someone on the outside to make those investment decisions for you. If we can attract the people that can do it internally, it's a lot cheaper for us to do it that way. The other thing is also a much better alignment. We can structure the compensation of the people managing the money to make sure that they're aligned with the pension beneficiaries, where we don't have control over the compensation of people who are managing money on the outside for us. So we have to keep all of this in balance, and you've had a similar slide, but what I would suggest, and there's no laser here, the light-colored ball above contributions is the working you. That was you working and contributing to the plan and to your employer as well. And the green ball on the right-hand side is the retired you. You're receiving your benefits. And as you've heard, 25 cents from you and the employer go in over here, and on the other side, $1 comes out. So during your working life, BCI is investing that money to generate the other 75 cents. And over the long term, we need to generate 6.5% to make sure that everything stays in balance. And Philip has just shown you that there is today a surplus in the fund of about just under $3 billion. I think that's a good thing, because I know that there are rainy days and the markets have been going up. This is the longest recovery in recorded recovery in recorded history. And it's been going on now for over 10 years. And at some point, we will have a correction. Now, don't be afraid of a correction. The newspapers are going to say, oh, no, BCI lost I don't know how many billions of dollars. We don't actually lose it. What we have is an accounting principle where if something is worth 100, we have to value it at the end of the year as if we were selling it. And if the value is, if we were to sell it, is $90, then we're going to say, well, that's worth $90. The fact is, it's still on our books. We're not selling assets. What we're doing is going out during a crisis and taking advantage of everyone else who has to sell, those who paid too much, those who borrowed too much, those who can't get through the crisis. And so the $3 billion is not a bad thing, because when markets fall, we will have a revaluation, and some of that may get used up there. So how are we doing that? How are we making these changes? First, we're looking at risk differently and expanding and diversifying the portfolio. We're putting a lot more assets into private assets. And the reason for that is, for example, we own, through BCI, a power line in Chile. We've owned that power line in Chile since 2006. It took about 9-10 months to buy that power line, all of going down and seeing it, negotiating. If we wanted to sell that power line today, it would probably take us about 9 months to sell it. We could probably sell it in a much shorter period of time, but at a significant discount from what the true value is. But the nice thing about the sort of liabilities that we have in a pension fund is they are very, very long term. We're not required to sell any assets at a time other than our choosing. So we're never forced to sell something. So what happens is, with these illiquid assets, you get paid a little bit more for taking that risk of not being able to sell it right away. If we have a whole bunch of TD or Royal Bank stock, We could sell that in a few minutes. If we have a power line in Chile, it might take us 9 months. So the markets tend to compensate you for taking that risk. So what we've done is we're putting more of the assets with your board into these illiquid assets where we're getting paid a risk premium for that illiquidity. And it's, I don't want to say it's free, but we're collecting that without really taking that risk. So we're putting more assets into private assets. We're also investing, as I said, more real estate in the development side, more credit in our fixed income portfolios, and we've also been diversifying both our international and our private equity and our real estate outside of Canada. And finally, in becoming more cost effective, as I said, we are internalizing much more of the assets. Those decisions are being made inside. When I arrived 5.5 years ago, we had just under 200 people at BCI. Today, we're just over 500 people. And those people have been brought in to make those investment decisions as we take away money from external managers. Last year, we brought in from our public market managers, public equity managers, we internalized over $6 billion of assets that we were previously paying fees on that are now being managed internally. So let me give you a picture of how the allocations are changing. Back in 2000, 85% of the assets were in the public markets, with only 15% in private markets. 2018, that's changed to 60% in the public markets, so it's fallen from 85. And our target is to get it close to 50-50 in the next 3 to 4 years. And we are on target. What types of businesses are we buying? Springs Window Fashion is a business we own, and we sit on the board of that company. If you've ever gone into Costco, Home Depot, or Lowe's to buy window coverings, you will have been buying one of our products. It is the second largest in the world. And what's nice about an asset like this is it's recession-proof. When people hit tough times, they may not sell their house, but they want to invest in making the house look a little bit better. So they'll go and spend some money on things like their windows. Second company here is Verifone. When you pull out your credit card and you're or your debit card and you're paying at a restaurant or at a shop, you get a little machine. We own one of the largest payment systems in the world, Verifone. It's active in over 150 countries. We've also been diversifying globally. In 2000, 77% of the portfolio was in Canada. Canada has about less than 3% of the world's assets and opportunities, but we had 77% of our portfolio there, only 23% was outside of Canada. Today we have 41, or last year it was actually 41% of the portfolio in Canada, and close to 60% is now outside. And what that does is open up the portfolio to a whole lot more investment opportunities so that we can find things that are going to allow us to generate in the long run that 6.5%. There's also a lot less correlation between some of these markets. So for example, what's the link between offices in Singapore and offices in Toronto? Honestly, there's not much. So if you think the markets are going down, there's very rarely do all markets move in the same direction at the same time. But we're also diversifying the types of assets. So historically, we might have bought an office building. Here's Canada Post. We're now we're building an office building, but there's also a substantial amount of retail in there. It's not up here, but Oak Ridge Shopping Center, which we bought at, I think it was the end of 2016, early 2017, is historically a shopping center, but it's being redeveloped as a shopping center. It's going to have offices, residential, as well as community services and community center and parks. And finally, becoming more cost effective. This is the historical model. Municipal would pass their savings to us. We would give it to an external money manager. They would go and buy the company. Then they'd hand the money back to us, less their fees. The new model is we're taking the money and investing it directly in the business. Not only does it save fees, but it also allows us to sit directly on the boards of the companies that we're managing and that we own. And sitting on the board, we have therefore people not only on the board, but on the compensation committee. And as much as we'd like to think that management does what we ask them to do, the reality is people do what you pay them to do in most cases. And so in sitting on the compensation committee of the companies that we buy, we have a lot more control over the behavior and the motivations of the people who are running our businesses. And finally, it's been said over and over, the reason that this is important for us is because 75 cents of every dollar that ends up being paid to you in pension is as a result of the investment decisions that are being made within BCI, and it's a role that we take very, very seriously. So thank you very much. Those are my comments, and I believe we'll have questions after.
Okay, thank you, Gordon, for that very clear explanation on the investments. I have a few more comments to close our report for today. As a board, our focus is on a healthy plan now and for the future. That means taking the long-term view. In the coming year, we will act on the results of the valuation. Those actions will support the basic account and further sustain the inflation adjustment account. We also expect to complete our group benefit review. By the end of this year, we'll have input from you and a complete picture of the data. We will continue our conversation with the plan partners about how to keep the plan healthy and sustainable into the future. We also have a responsible investment action plan. This has been the focus of the investment committee. The action plan has guided revisions to our investment beliefs and our ongoing assessment of the impact of climate change on the portfolio. We have also strengthened our investment governance and oversight by adding 2 additional non-trustee experts to our investment committee. Both Jill Peppel and Graham Pugh bring deep experience with pensions and investments. They will help us better deal with complexities of investments. Their appointment ensures we have the investment advice we need as a board. This year, we'll look to move more communication online to help you connect with your pension. Message Center is the new feature in My Account. It allows you to send secure messages, including questions about your pension, to the plan. All the messages are saved in one place, so you can refer to them at any time. We also reorganized the website to collect all learning resources in one place. There is a new tab called Learning Resources, where you can find online and in-person workshops, in-depth articles, and more. Applying for your pension online is now faster. As I mentioned at the beginning, this year, we are webcasting the annual general meeting. That means more members can join us live or watch all or part of the AGM later. You can view the meeting later through a link on the website. Throughout our anniversary year, we are posting highlights each month that look back at the milestones of the last 80 years. You can find a link to these on the website homepage. So now let's begin the question and answer session. There is a microphone on each side. We will get to as many questions as we can. Please ask one question at a time. We will also take online questions from those watching the webcast. You can enter your question in the sidebar. Once everyone has had a chance with the first question, we can move to a second question. On stage with me, I will have our Vice Chair, Hilary Brown, our Valuation Committee Chair, Philip Twyford, our Benefits Committee Chair, Denise Bernardo, BCI CEO and CIO, Gordon Fife, and Executive Director, Judy Payne. Our service providers are also here to answer questions as needed. As we note, Gordon has to leave by 11:30, so if you have a specific question for him, you may want to ask those up front. We will still be able to answer questions about investments, questions after that, as Rob Field, who is the Vice President of Relation Management at BCI, is here to help us out. So we're ready for your questions, so I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you for the excellent dissertation, but I have one concern. I would like an answer to the question, is there provincial legislation in place that prevents any current or future BC government from sticking that clause in the pension plan and raiding it, like has been done with ICBC and BC Hydro?
Judy, would you know anything about that one?
Thanks, Gary. The pension plan is set up by virtue of statute. Government is one of the key players, one of the stakeholders in the municipal pension plan. While I would say no, there isn't something that prevents government from doing that, I would say that one of the successes and key foundational aspects of the municipal pension plan's joint trusteeship model and the success of that model is that there's bipartisan support. In 1999, I believe it was an NDP government that helped bring the legislation through, and later it was a Liberal government that helped finish the implementation of joint trusteeship for the plan. So there's strong bipartisan support. The way the plan is currently structured enables the government to secure and maintain a AAA credit rating. Because the government doesn't have the liabilities on its books the way it did when it was the sole sponsor of the plan. So I think we're in a fairly strong position.
If I remember correctly, W.A.C. Bennett, decades ago, did raid the government pension plan. Anyway, okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Well, Brian McConville, I'm a retired member of the plan. And a retired member of the plan. That'll be enough. I noticed there's a growth in the membership of the plan this year. We got quite a large group of new active members who joined. Now, the growth in the plan includes retired members. It seems in the last few years you've concentrated protecting and putting money aside for the active members so that they have a pension in the future. And that's a very good thing. But there's a growth in the retired members as well. What's the chance of you changing your philosophy in a way to put more emphasis on putting money aside to meet the needs of the retired members? And one of the things at the moment is the savings from the MSP plan, that you don't have to pay anymore as part of our benefits. It might need approaching the government to change the rules in some way, but I think you need to put a bit more emphasis on your philosophy to put some more money aside for the future retirees of the plan rather than all the money going to the active members of the plan. Thank you. I would like Gary to answer that. Thanks.
Okay.
Or you don't have a legal advisor here, or your actuary could also help. Thanks.
Okay. So we do have I just want to make comment that our pension is secure. It is based on a formula that when you contribute to the plan, it's based on a formula. So your pension is secured because it's based on your salary and years of service and the contributions that you make into the plan. All right. So increasing funding increasing your funding to the IA means that COLA protection is stronger. All right. So from that perspective, I think it's. I'm not sure if that's answering your question or not.
No, you're not.
No, okay,
but anyway. I know the figures are there and what the plan is guaranteed and secured,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about you guys changing your view of the world to look at retirees a bit more open, so that you put some money aside for our retired benefits, which are not part of the guaranteed part of the plan at the moment. It just needs you to buy into the idea that that's an important thing to do. And I leave that with you. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Microphone number 2.
Yeah, Ed Pecos, retired firefighter and former trustee of the board. One slide that I saw up that I wrote down, though, the figures didn't add up. There was 26% active members, 96% retired members, so that leaves a 5% gap there. Is that people that have left their money in the plan?
Yes.
For their pensions? I'm assuming that's...
Yes.
Okay, that's money that's deferred and put aside until they finally do retire, then they become part of the 96%.
That's right.
I would
Yes.
think. Okay. Question to Mr. Fife. Recently, BC Ferries put out a $250 million bond request, and apparently it sold out pretty quick. I'm just asking if BCI has gone ahead or if they're going to buy into BC Ferries and buy their bonds.
Ed, we do. We look at it. I can't answer whether we bought some of that or not, but we do look at it, and we know them. They're only a few blocks away from us, and some of their credit will be in our portfolio. But we review all of them, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Leslie, number 1.
I am just retired, so I have a question. Well, I have a couple of questions, and one of them I did bring up last year when I was here, and it has to do with the YMPE. And as I worked 33 years in the K-12 sector as a precarious worker, and when I look at the pension that I have now, it's really not a lot after that many years of paying into it. And part of the problem is the YMPE, because particularly in the K-12 sector, there's very, very few people who can reach that amount other than maybe some of our trades. Yet we're subsidizing the higher income earners so that they get a better pension when they retire. This has been, I believe, the board has been looking at this for 10 years. Is there any update on, or any progress or any decision that's going to be made on the removal of that, so that it's fair, so that everybody contributes the same, and we're not, your low-income earners are not subsidizing your higher wage earners? The other thing is the question of the bridge. And again, in K-12 sector, I don't know about other sectors, very, very few members even get to access that bridge because they can't afford to retire at age 55. So is there any thought of removing that also? So,
Okay. Judy, could you comment on those, please?
Sure. So the imbalance in the plan with respect to the integration with YMPE is something that the board has been looking at for a couple of years now. It is one of those items that have been referred to the plan partners to look at with respect to plan design changes, potentially down the road. And the board is looking at the options available to it in the event that the plan partners do not reach agreement with respect to plan design to address that imbalance. The options really available to the board are to look at how contributions are integrated with the YMPE in order to increase the balance or the equity within the plan structure. Oh, sorry, and the bridge is a fundamental plan design change, so that's been referred to the plan partners.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick question online. So, Gord, could you?
The question is, can I comment on how much BCI paid for extra salaries the 300 hires, versus fees paid to previous hired managers. I can't give you a specific figure, no, but I can say that none of my people own a private jet. So a lot of our previous managers and some of the still current ones will come and see us. And when we fly into Victoria, if you ever come visit us, you'll often see a private jet or two parked. And that's usually some of the people who were charging you fees for managing your money. But it is, as I said, significantly more expensive when we outsource the management of the money than when we're doing it inside. One example would be if we add $1 billion to the real estate portfolio, or let's say the private equity portfolio, if we add $1 billion to the private equity portfolio, the fee structure on that, the fees for private equity when they're managed externally are somewhere around 5 or 6% per year. So you can do the math. If 5-6% on $1 billion, that's how much it costs. We may not have to add anybody to our team to manage the extra $1 billion. If we do, maybe we add one person, and they're not getting 5 or 6% of the $1 billion. So it is significantly less. I don't have the specific numbers, no. I know we have provided that to the various boards of our trustees, but I don't have them here today, no.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Microphone number 2.
Hello. I think this is for Denisa from Pacific Blue Cross. I'm just wondering if it's being looked at to increase the annual amount for the dental plan. Right now, it goes pretty fast.
So this is part of the review. We're looking at all the data that are getting in on a yearly basis, and then what the feedback that we hope to receive from members is what we will look at in terms of any changes that we need to make. So it all depends on the usage and all of the costs that come with that dental program too. So I know the premiums are paying for it now, but we'd have to look and see where we break even or what it would cost more.
Do you have an idea of timeline on that review?
Sorry, I didn't.
Do you have an idea of timeline on that review?
Well, the premiums are set each year. So the board will probably get a recommendation from the benefits committee at the November meeting to take into effect for the February changes to the pension plans.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Microphone number 2.
Hi there. My name is Bruce Scott. I'm a union rep for an organization on the North Shore. We have 4 bargaining units, and all of our members are members of the Municipal Pension Plan. And I just want to add to the sister's comments that she made earlier on, just so the room fully understands. I was here last year, and I raised the issue about the bridging and early retirement, and was informed that it was a very complex process to change. And I suggested at the time that the board conduct a survey to find out what the wishes might be of the entire membership. And I don't know whether anything's happened. I haven't heard a report on that. But just so people understand, out of all the plan members in the municipal pension plan, there's over 80% that won't be able to access the bridging formula and early retirement because they don't make enough money. And they usually have to end up working longer and closer to the normal retirement age of 65. Meanwhile, that group of people are paying into the bridge benefit, a benefit that they'll never see and use. So in a sense, they're subsidizing the smaller group that is accessing it. And our group, I'm a delegate on COJU, which is one of the plan partner groups, and we don't support the continuation of subsidizing this smaller group getting that bridge benefit. It's my understanding that if we were to take the money that we're contributing to the bridge benefit and turn it back into an accrual and increase our accrual rate, our members who retire would likely get closer to 50% more in their pension payouts when they retire. So I've been on this. I've been a delegate in this partner group for 8 years, and when I got here, the discussion was already engaged in what do we do with the bridge benefit, and I want you to know too that the college plan, this was on their radar a while back, and the Teamsters plan and the public service plan. and they have all decided to trade off that bridge, the bridge benefit, and turn that accrual into a flat rate so that they're getting higher pension returns. And hearing today that it's just on the radar again, I don't think that's a responsible way of addressing this issue. It's been long ongoing. I understand there's a lot of groups and a lot of layers in the onion to try and get through to get decisions made, but 10 years is too long. The people that are actively paying into the plan right now could be doing more for their retirement benefits if we had acted on this earlier. And I guess my plea is to try to, if there's in-house politics between the different partner groups, that has to be sorted out. And if it can't be sorted out, I think I respectfully request that the board take some initiative and act on this as soon as they can, because it's been going on way too long. Thank you for giving me the time.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Leslie, mic one.
I've just got another question. I was looking also when I did my pension application at the benefits and the premium costs for those benefits. And I found it really interesting, especially with the extended health, that if you take those benefits as single, I think it was $17.50 a month. But if you take it as a couple, it's 3 or 4 times the amount. So I was wondering if somebody could explain the difference in the premium cost, because I think for a couple it's 87 something a month, where it's single it's 17.50, and that's a huge increase to cover 2 people rather than just one, and you're not getting any more. Your coverage isn't increased. What you get for it isn't, other than you can claim on both, but that seems to be a huge amount to be paying for that benefit. So I'm wondering if somebody could explain that.
Sure. Monique, would you be able to, do you have a mic?
Is this one on? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. Okay, thank you for your question. It's a very good question. At Pacific Blue Cross, and I'm as well as the team that takes a look at the rates for the plan, we do a lot of review of the actual rates, and they're set in that way because of the probability of claims coming in. When couples are joining the plan, typically the expenses end up being far more than a single person, and the rates are just adjusted based on the usage of the actual plan design. So.
I find that hard to believe that it's going to be way more expensive to cover 2 people than it is one. If I chose to do it myself at $17.50 or $17.50, and my husband does his for $17.50, you are going to get the same expenses and the same coverage as if you put it together. I'm not buying that explanation that
Okay.
because it's a couple, that it's going to increase the cost fourfold. That's what you're looking at, it's
Right.
fourfold.
Right. So it really depends on the couple, and statistically, when we take a look at the coverage that we're providing, for example, to all British Columbians over the larger group of individuals, that's what we find is actually correct. So that's.
Yeah. So Leslie, the only other comment we can make there is the spouse is not subsidized in our plan. It's just the members. Okay. For the extended health there. Okay.
But your spousal coverage isn't.
Then they should do same.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's a subsidy.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mary, on mic one.
My name's Mary Polak. This is a question for Philip, and this is on members' demographics. And over the years, as we have been retired, we have heard baby boomers. Somehow we didn't parachute in. We were contributing all the years we were. My question is, when are we going to be at the end of baby boomers retiring? Is it coming to an end? And then what is the projected time before there will be, is it 15, 20 years, before we will start to see a decrease?
15. Yeah.
I think it's on.
Oh, I think I was looking for a green light, but so the question about baby boomers, it wasn't my fault. So yes, baby boomers, basically those 55 and above. I was just at the Long Service Awards representing the Ministry of Health. We had people getting 45-year pins. Some people still working 50 years. So I think projecting when we're going to see the surge of baby boomers finally sort of working through, you're realistically looking probably 15% or 15 years, sorry, as that demographic continues to work through. If we look at an average retirement age right now of 70 is the average, boomers being 55, you still have 15 years of this trend moving through, and who knows what the new trends will look like. What I can tell you from my working position is we do have people who continue to work well into their 70s. People find passion in work. So I don't have a specific answer, but what I'm looking at is probably 15 years of the baby boomers moving through. But go back to the key message, plan is well funded. We're at 105%, we're in great shape, and we're balancing off both those who are active and those who are retired. So I think we're in good shape.
Okay, we're going to move to an online question. I think, Judy, you have one?
Sure. So the online question was, will the plan consider in the future additional voluntary contributions similar to what OMERS provides? So the short answer is there's no decision or move to do that imminently, but the board is always consistently thinking about what the future holds and what's the best way to position the plan for long-term sustainability. It is an issue we've looked at historically. It does come with, if we were to pursue it, it does come with significant administrative changes that would require the support of both agents, the BC Pension Corporation and the BC Investment Management Corporation, who also are continually thinking about the future and what strategic shifts they need to make. So I wouldn't say never, but it's not on the horizon right now.
Okay, thank you. Go to microphone number 2.
Yes, my name is Hazel Baxter, and I'm a retired plan member. And thank you for your presentations. But I did expect to hear what you're doing with the money that you no longer have to pay for the MSP premium.
Okay.
So I can take that. The money that we're no longer paying for the MSP premium remains in the basic account. So it goes into the general calculation. So we're leaving the money in the plan, and we're using that as part of the large pool of funds that we have.
You wouldn't consider giving the benefit of that back to the members?
Under the joint trust agreement, we can't. The rules are quite specific on what we can do with the funds. We're very limited in that, and we have to follow the plan rules.
Okay, microphone number 1.
My name is Maureen Landell. I'm a retired nurse of 12 years. I noticed that your investment management fee went up by 25%. And I understand that that money, part of it was to cover a GST payment. I'm interested in what you're going to lower it to for the coming year.
Rob, from BCI?
Hi there. In terms of the fee increase that you noticed, we have been in the Supreme Court of Canada to make our case that BCI and our pool funds should be exempt from GST, HST. We have not received the judgment yet. We're expecting it. The hearing has been closed for some time. So when we have that news, we'll certainly provide an update to the board and obviously to our clients. Okay?
Another question is, are you funding any overseas companies in the sense of them doing business for you, choosing what to invest in? Are you handling any of those overseas?
As Gordon mentioned, just in terms of BCI and our operations, we're a global investor. And so, yeah, we're active across.
Well, I know you're active,
yeah.
But are you funding any offices?
Offices? BCI directly? No.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Microphone number 2.
Yeah, Terry Erskine, First Vice President for the Municipal Pension Retirees Association. And my question deals with these benefits. Our organization advocated, we're not a lobby group, advocated for many levels of government, including the Liberals, the NDP, and the strategists for the Green Party, to eliminate the MSP premiums with a health insurers tax. And those provided significant savings to the pension plan. We were hoping that, at least I was hoping, that some of those funds, maybe not all of them, but some of those funds could have been through some form of innovation involving the engagement of stakeholders to take those savings and put them back into our group health benefits account. We are presently in the throes of lobbying the federal government on savings, including pharmacare. And we'll continue to have saving initiatives for other ways that our pension plan can save those funds. My question to you is this board prepared to take cost-saving initiatives that come their way and put those back, some of those back, into group health benefits for retirees in our plan?
You want to take that or do you want me to take that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So I'll go back to the earlier point. I appreciate your comments and I appreciate what you're saying. As we reduced MSP, as we eliminated MSP, the savings did remain in the basic account in keeping with the pension rules under the joint trust agreement, which governs what we can do with the funding. The board does not have the flexibility at this point in time to do anything other than what is prescribed in the joint trust agreement. So our number one duty is to protect that basic account, and that's what we're doing. I think in terms of the benefits, do you want to talk about that or?
Well, we haven't actually made a decision as a board in terms of the MSP, but Philip is quite right in terms of we don't have that flexibility. So in some ways our hands are tied, and I don't know if we can think outside the box in terms of how to handle that. I guess the way you can think about it is it's savings on a personal level, and it's also savings for the plan as a whole, that you get to keep that money into the basics.
As a supplemental question then, my question is this. These rules that tie the hands of the pension trustees can be modified from time to time. Innovation is with significant stakeholder groups is what's going to cause this to happen. So my question is this. Given how long this has been in effect, this Board of Trustees was put on notice about the potential change even long before it occurred. And I guess my question to you is, we stand up and talk about the same things. If we're considered to be a stakeholder and a shareholder in this plan, and if we use innovative methods to try to convince levels of government to us to save money so the plan can save money, our idea is not necessarily to put it into the general plan, but we expect trustees to step forward, at least partially, and take some of those savings and put it back into our benefit plans that we lost. That's my point. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Stephen, mic one.
Stephen Polak, President of the Municipal Pension Retirees Association. Back in 1973, the MEPC negotiated with the government of the day, who happened to be the NDP, to pay 50% of the MSP premiums from the basic account. So that's been going on since 1973. So now, starting in 2020, the plan will no longer have to pay the MSP premiums. That'll be a significant savings. The MPRA has been working and advocating throughout the province with the board, with plan partners, about the whole issue of MSP premiums being used for group health benefits. And I understand that there's a working group of the plan partners made up of the provincial government, the UBCM and the MEPC, who have been having discussions on the whole issue of accrual rates and also on group health benefits. And I'm just wondering if anybody knows where those talks are at, because I think it's important for all of us to know whether or not those are going forward, and if the board is having any influence on those planned partners to make those things happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Judy, can you comment a little bit on those discussions, please?
So the Plan Partner Working Group has been meeting a lot over the last year. Right now, we don't have any meetings scheduled. The parties have gone back to talk with their respective stakeholders with respect to where they're at. So there's no decision imminent at this point, but they've been working pretty hard over the past year.
Okay, thanks. We got a couple of online questions. I'll take one here, which is, what is the average retirement age? So if you look in the annual report on page 18, the average retirement age is age 62. Okay. We got another one. Rob, can you read your question?
It's not on.
Mic on? Oh, now, there it is. So the question is, why was a retroactive GST payment required? The really quick answer to that question is accounting treatment. Our discussions and I guess our efforts to continue to make the claim that our pool funds are exempt from GST, HST has been going on for years. We were successful in British Columbia, the Supreme Court, the Appeals Court in British Columbia, and then at some point, based on perspective of our auditors and the fact that we were now going also to the Supreme Court, there was an indication that from an accounting perspective, we needed to at least recognize it as a potential payment. And so that is what's led to the recognition of GST and the collection of GST, HST within our financial statements, and thus has impacted the plan. But again, we're expecting the judgment, and then once we have the judgment, we will certainly be communicating and advising clients what the outcome is.
Okay, thanks. Brian, mic one.
Yeah, you called it. Name's Brian McConville, retired member. I see that I would concede if anyone had said a first question, because this is my second question, and I'm not one to hog the mic. But anyway, it hasn't been in your report, and it's not a question about the MSP, by the way. The nurses and the HEABC recently negotiated in their collective agreement to set 1% aside for nurses' benefits. Now, the HEABC and the nurses are both partners in the plan and have members on the board. My question is, and this would go to the chair of the board and your legal advice, if there is any here, has there any been discussion at the board regarding the fact that the BCNU and the HEABC, as I said, who are both on the board and our partners, want to set up a separate pension plan along with this 1% that's been set aside? And how would that work? Would they set up a separate pension plan, and would they be able to carve out their members from the existing municipal pension plan. Has there any been discussions at the board or at the partner level on this issue? Thank you.
Yeah, so I can get Phil to.
So what I can tell you at this point in time is that the nurses have asked for information. We have provided actuarial information, and they are reviewing that information at this point in time. There have been no other decisions than that.
Now, who's paying for the actuarial information? Are the nurses, or is that coming out of our plan?
In what sense? So we just turned over information that is already available.
So
They're paying for the costs of collecting and providing that information. Is that your question? Like
that was my second question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I can just interrupt here. Judy, if you can highlight on that.
Yeah, so if I could just elaborate maybe. So HEABC and BCNU are both appointing authorities in the plan, and the HEABC and the Nurses Bargaining Association recently negotiated a collective agreement that has a review of nurses' pensions as part of that. As part of that collective agreement, they approached the board and asked the board to provide them with some information that would help them consider the options that they want to look at. The board has agreed in principle to provide that data. The data has not been shared at this point. The NBA has agreed to, or the analysis has not been shared at this point. The NBA has agreed to pay for the cost of the preparation of that analysis, and we're still negotiating essentially terms. So once there's agreement about what work will be provided, and we have written accountability from the NBA to pay for that cost, then the work will be undertaken. But it's not been started at this point. We're still negotiating.
Well, I'm really surprised that the board and the partners, now some of these same people would be partners on the board who've negotiated this agreement, would even consider looking at this issue because BCNU, for example, they don't represent all nurses. They probably don't represent managing nurses. And the HEABC is just a bargaining agent. I'm really surprised that your board or the partners would be looking at this because there's clearly a conflict of interest of the people involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Microphone number 2.
Hi, I'm Roger Bennett, and I'm still a member. My wife and I are both pension members of the plan. I opted out of the medical part, becoming a spouse underneath her plan. And so maybe the answer is why it's $87 or whatever it is because I'm not a member. I would go into the plan at 87 to be still on the plan when I'm retired. Is that correct? The question from that lady back there saying why is there a $17.50 monthly fee after retirement compared to an $87 fee? Is the $87 fee because the partner is not a plan member? No? No. It's not?
So I don't have the premiums in front of me. Does staff have the premiums available? Because that would be helpful. What I can tell you is that the premiums themselves are articulated on the plan's website. There are distinctions between single and couple, and member premiums are subsidized by the plan, but spousal premiums are not. So it would not at all surprise me if part of that delta between those two figures is due to the subsidy differences.
I see there's nobody else standing up. So my second question would be, when you own an asset outright, example, I think it was the Chile power transmission line, is that an outright, pardon? Power lines? Is that an outright asset or is it shared with somebody else?
Rob?
It's a co-investment.
Co-investment.
So there are other partners. Similar in terms of investors with long-term horizons. Some of them are pension funds as well.
Because I was wondering, like, for example, like Manitoba, if you were a member of the Manitoba transmission lines, they lost 50% of them. And like California in the fires last year lost So much so that it put the company into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And it'd be nice to be shared when you go into a great loss like that.
Absolutely diversified. And I think that gets to Gordon's comments, and I think a member's question earlier, what keeps them up at night.
Thanks,
so
Roger.
Diversification's your friend.
Thanks, Rob.
So, Gary, I do have that information. Do you mind if I just speak to that?
Sure. Please, Judy.
So the question has come up about the differences between premiums for singles and couples. So the couple premium or proxy premium is precisely double the single premium. The difference when we're looking at the cost of a single coverage for a member with 10 years of service at $1,750 a month, and that same person's coverage, if they have a spouse, being $87.50, is due to the subsidy that the plan provides the member with respect to their portion of the premium. So the cost of a couple premium is precisely double that of a single premium, but for the subsidy.
Great. Oh, one more question. Number 2.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I feel compelled to comment on this. I think if there's 2 members in a family of the pension plan, then they should both do the individual within their own plans, because then they both pay $1,750 and they both are covered. If they choose to opt out and go under their spouse's plan, then they pay the large amount.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. Okay. I don't think we have any more online questions, and we don't see any more at the mics. So this will conclude then our 2019 Annual General Meeting. We're pleased that so many of you could join us, both here in the audience and across the province through our webcast. The webcast video will be available on the plan website in the coming days. We invite you to share your thoughts about the meeting. Place your completed yellow AGM comment cards in one of the feedback boxes at the door. If you have any white personal pension questions form filled out, please insert those into the boxes as well. You'll be contacted with a response. So thank you for all your participation today, and we'll see you at next year's AGM on October 15, 2020.